So welcome. It's great that we've got so many of you here for our very first online tutorial. Things have changed so much, obviously, in the last little while. This tutorial or this workshop was planned to be in our office, but with everything that's happening with the coronavirus, obviously we've had to cancel that. We've put it online. We are recording this session, so we will be able to do a cut down version of this, repurpose it and send it out, which will be great for anybody that wants to know a little more. And we're more than happy to do more online tutorials on specific areas. This one's going to be just a very general one about the ReaderPen, and we're going to be covering a number of different areas. So I'm not sure at all. There's 60 or 70 that are dialing into the event, which is absolutely great. I'm not sure how many of you have actually got a ReaderPen, and those of you who are looking at getting a ReaderPen and being able to use it in your school environment. So for those of you that have already got a pen, we could be covering areas that you are, very familiar with, and hopefully we'll be able to share some different areas of the pen as far as that's concerned. So what I'd really like to be able to do is just to give you a bit of an overview of what we're going to cover today. The ReaderPen is used widely and around the world, so we're going to be just talking about the pen itself and covering off on the navigation of the pen and how it's used, as well as covering off on some of the new features that have just recently been released. And to be able to give you a question and answer session a little later in the 1 hour that we have available. So if you do have any questions, can I please ask that you just enter them in chat? As I've said before, Andrea will be monitoring those questions, and then she'll be able at the end to be able to raise some of those questions that you may have. Of course, you might ask a question and then I might cover that during the course of the event, but don't worry about that. I'm very happy to be able to just answer anything that you've really got. So what I've got here on the moment is just our user guide, but before I sort of get into things, I'd really like to be able to make sure that hopefully you've had a chance to download this. You will be able to see it on the screen, which will be great. And I will cover some of this, but the user guide is something that we've produced over the last few months, and it's got a lot of useful information that we would suggest that you have if you've got a pen. And if you need copies of it, well, we can send you a digital copy without any problem. And we do have lots of paper copies as far as this is concerned, where I can send you these out. They're 8 pages. There's a ton of really good information in there, and I'll be able to send these out to any school or speech pathologist or any user that would perhaps like to have some of these on hand. There's absolutely no problems. But before I start with regards to the pen, I'd like to give you a bit of a background on the company. And there's a bit of confusion sometimes. People go, well, are you the ReaderPen people? Are you the C-Pen people? Are you the scanning pens people? Well, we're all of the above. So our company is called Scanning Pens. We're a British company. In fact, the company itself was founded by Jack Churchill, who is the great-grandson of Sir Winston Churchill. Jack was at university in the UK, and he is a dyslexic, and he was very frustrated with the very limited amount of assistive technology that was available for people with reading difficulties and reading issues. So he wanted to find something that would be able to assist those people that do have reading problems. And he found a company called C-Pen. C-Pen is actually based in Sweden, and we are Scanning Pens is the global distributor of C-Pens throughout the world. And we make a number of different products. We have the ReaderPen, which is what we're going to be talking about today. We also have the exam reader, and I'll be talking a little bit about that as well. And we have a number of other products as well. I won't go into those just yet, but more than happy to answer any questions if people are really interested as far as that is concerned. So, as I've mentioned before, Scanning Pens is based in the UK, and it has a couple of offices there. A few years ago, they decided to set up in the United States, and were really surprised at the great take-up of the pens. And so since then, they've opened offices in Canada, in India, and a couple of years ago here in Australia. So we did have a couple of resellers here. Our pens are available through Every Spell in each state throughout Australia. Also, companies like Spectronics also sell the ReaderPen. We certainly don't mind if you purchase pens through Spells or Spectronics or any of our other resellers. It's certainly available on Amazon and one or two other sites. But we can certainly supply pens to schools, to individuals. And we also have free trials which are available to schools and institutions. We have actually, in today's difficult environment with a lot of people now working from home and from undertaking school tutoring, if you like, or in-house tutoring for their own students, for their own children, we do have trials available to parents as well. So if you'd like any information on any of that, please feel free to drop me a note. My email is really simple. It's david@scanningpens.com, or you can contact auinfo@scanningpens.com, whatever you prefer. So if you do need to drop me a line, or you do want to undertake a trial, or you do need some more information, or you do want to purchase some pens, just send me an email, david@scanningpens.com. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to just perhaps kick off and show you the ReaderPen and what it can do. Hopefully you can see on the screen the user guide, which is up and running. And I'll just run through some of those pages, but we'll be coming back to that user guide in a little while and covering many of the different various areas of that. So the user guide itself is just an 8-page booklet, which is full of all sorts of information. And let me just show you some of that right now. If I can just get this up and running, and we can get this happening. I'll just move this over here a little bit and just show you some of the pages in the user guide, but we will be coming back to those. So we'll be looking at the pen itself, some of the controls of the pen and how you use that, the best way to hold the pen and how to scan. This page here is the menu guide, and it's a really useful page, and it shows you really the schematics of the pen and the various components. There are 5 main parts to the pen, but we'll be sort of covering that as we go through as well. We have in the guide hints and tips, lots of common questions that we get asked all the time, and this will answer a lot of them. We'll be talking about the scan to file functionality of the pen and the voice recorder. All of these are built in. Other questions that are included in the guide. And one area that and this is the back page of the guide with our details. But one thing that I'd like to start with is this little illustration here, which is quite important as far as everything is concerned. There's lots of facts and figures in there. The first one is that one right in the middle, which talks about over 2.5 million Australians are dyslexic. And we have in Australia, just like in every other advanced country, every other country in the world, 10% of the population of any country is dyslexic. And that's a fact, and it's a global situation. So we're now 25 million people, so 2.5 million dyslexics, 2.5 million Australians are dyslexic. More importantly, 10% of every school you know, students in every school are dyslexic, which means there needs to be assistive technology and assistance provided for them. The ReaderPen is just one tool that can be used. It's not the only tool, and it's not the answer to every student. But when you know that 10% of your school students are dyslexic, it puts it in perspective. Added that is this figure right here in the top left-hand corner there. 15 to 20% of the population has language-based learning disability. So by applying that, 15 to 20% of students in your school will require some assistance. Most teachers do not argue with that. It's sort of a fact that they certainly are very, very aware of. I remember being at a conference once and talking to a principal, and he said, "No, I disagree with that." And I went, "Oh, here we go." And he said his school was in a poor socio-economic area, and 33%, 1/3 of his students had reading issues and reading problems. So it's something that's common, and there is a duty of care really for schools to be able to address that. As I said, the ReaderPen is just one example of a tool that will be able to provide assistance. Another really important figure here in this illustration is the fact that only 59% of Australian students achieve proficient standard in reading literacy. And that is a PISA figure, which has just come out. It used to be 61%, it's dropped 2%, so we're heading in the wrong direction there. So again, these are figures that you probably are aware of. And this one in the bottom right-hand corner, we know that if you can see and hear the words together, it improves comprehension and learning and retention. In fact, seeing and hearing words together improves comprehension by 76%. So the ReaderPen is a great tool to be able to do that. So let's go back here into our guide, and I just want to take you through the diagram to show you the various parts of the pen. Now, I know that you can see my screen at the moment, and you can also see the pen here. So this is the pen which I've got here. There's a couple of them. This is the ReaderPen, and this is the exam reader. I will go through the difference between the two, and I have two banners behind me which you can see. One talks about the ReaderPen, the other talks about the exam reader. But if you can just have a close look at this diagram at this point, there are very simple controls on the pen itself. There's just 3 buttons here which indicate exactly how to get the pen operating. The button here is with the little red symbol on it is the power button. You turn that on. It also is the back button, and the back button is hugely convenient because it will always take you back to the main menu, and I'll be running through the main menu in just a few seconds. The navigation of the pen itself is just like your TV remote control. We have up, down, left, right, and OK in the middle. And then there is a menu button here, and this menu provides access to some of the settings, which I'll talk about just very, very briefly. The front of the pen, I don't know if you can see it through here, but there is a camera built into the pen. All the processing gets undertaken in the pen itself. It doesn't need to connect to the Wi-Fi or to internet. There's quite a lot of processing power in the pen, built-in dictionaries, built-in storage. We'll talk about that in just a few moments' time. But the camera in the very end does all the hard work. It reads everything. And there's a little trigger here, which is in this illustration, which is this button just here on the very end of the pen. And this has to touch the paper. So bearing in mind that the ReaderPen will read text from any hard copy. We get asked all the time, will the ReaderPen read a computer screen or a mobile phone screen? And it simply won't. And the reason for that is because of the reflection from the screen back into the lens of the camera, which means that we're not able to be able to provide reliable processing. While we're at it, I can say that the pen will also not read handwriting. I wish it would, I'd be able to provide this pen to every chemist in the country. And it also won't read every font. It'll read any standard font. So any textbook, any novel, newspaper, magazine, provided that size of the text fits in between in the scanning window. And the size of the font required to be able to read is anywhere between a 6-point or a 22-point. So most fonts are around 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 fonts. So it'll read in size. So it'll read that without any problems. But if the font is too large, in other words, let's say it's a 30-point word, and it doesn't fit in the scanning window, then it won't be able to read that. When you touch the pen on the paper, and I'll be able to show you that in just a few moments' time, a light will come on. That light has to be working for the pen to be able to scan reliably. We also have a screen here, and the screen, if I turn the pen on, I'll be able to show you that in a few moments' time, but I've just turned the pen on, and there is the screen just roaring into life. The C-Pen logo comes up first, and then the pen goes into the text reader mode. I'm just going to put it on the main menu mode there, so you can sort of see that. The text, the screen is also a digital highlighter. When you scan, a highlighter comes on and tracks you through the word as you speak. So I'll be able to show you that in a few seconds. Of course, I'm right-handed. I have this screen, or the pen set up for right-handed use. So if I hold it in my right hand, which I'm doing now, I can see it. But of course, if I was left-handed, the screen would be upside down. So there is a setting on the pen. There's many settings on the pen where you can speed the pen up, you can slow it down, you can change the accent. And one of the other settings is to change from left hand to right hand mode. I did have a call at one stage from a school in in West Australia, actually, saying that they had the pen. It was fantastic. They were using it with a lot of students, but one of their students, a new student, was left-handed, and they wanted to order a left-hand pen. I was pleased to be able to tell them they didn't have to order a left-hand pen, that they just had to change the setting from right-handed to left-handed, and they were good to go. All right, I'm just going to move down here on how to scan, and it shows you how to hold the pen. But look, just like everything, there's no right or wrong way to hold the pen. It's whatever is comfortable for you or your students. So generally you need to hold it so you can scan relatively firmly, that you're not too jolting as far as that's concerned. But if you wanted to hold it at the top, there's no problem. If you want to hold it further down. But most people hold it like this, which is the illustration that's in the guide, which you've got there, so that you're not touching any of the controls. When you scan, though, you don't have to hold anything. Once it's in text mode, you just basically touch it to the paper, make sure the light comes on, and you can scan away. So let me move now down to the actual menu guide, which is a really important part of the pen. And you can see very clearly here the various components. As I've said, everything is contained in the pen itself. You don't need to connect to the internet or to Wi-Fi in order to use it. So there are 5 main components in the pen, and I'm just going to go through here so that you can perhaps see it on the pen that I've got here. So there's the date and time, which is telling me that it's May 18. I haven't set this pen, but I will do. But you can set the date and time. And then there is these 5 main areas. And you can see on the pen that I have here, you can see text reader and dictionary, excuse me. And they are the first 2 parts of the ReaderPen. The text reader is the thing that does the heavy lifting. There are actually 5 dictionaries built into the pen, and I'll run through those in a few moments' time. Scan to file is where you can, there's 2 parts to scan to file. It's basically our data storage. You can scan onto the pen and save save your text on the pen to be read back later, or you can plug it into a laptop or PC and transfer that file onto your laptop or PC. The other area within Scan to File is the ability to be able to scan directly from text and transfer that text directly onto a Word document or onto Google Drive or any kind of storage. And it'll transfer from the text to a cursor. So very, very good as far as being able to study or to transfer text, data capture mode. The recorder here, as the name suggests, is a voice recorder or a dictaphone. There's microphones in the pen itself, and you can see that in that previous illustration, whereby a student can record a lecture or a lesson or instructions from their teacher or speech pathologist, and be able to listen to those and also, if they wish, provide verbal feedback. So the storage on the pen is 2 to 3 gigabytes, just depending on the version that you have. And the storage shares the data storage under Scan to File and also the voice recorder as well. So both of these features are there. And under settings, we have a number of various settings. I've already mentioned some of them, whereby we can change the right hand and left hand situation on the pen, but you can also do things like change the accent and be able to come through and change from various accents. Now, one of the things that we've just done in the pen is we release new enhancements from time to time, and we've just launched some new features on the pen. And one of those features is, and it's under TTS here, called text to speech, a new accents on the pen. Let me show you exactly how that is. So for years, we've had a couple of accents. We've had the British English, and we've also had American English, but we've just launched Australian English. So any pen that you get now from us will have Australian English. I'm going to just play some of that for you. Now, there's a number of ways that you can hear on the pen. As you're probably aware, the pen does come with its own set of earphones, and you can plug in earphones just into the jack, which is at the back of the pen here. There's also a speaker on the pen, but the speaker on the pen, and it just comes through out of that little speaker here. The speaker is quite low, and it's designed just for single use. So say, for example, you're in a classroom and you scan something, you perhaps don't want to plug your earphones in, you can scan the word and just hold it to your ear, hold it at the front so that that's where the speaker is, and you'll be able to hear it. I've got an external speaker here, which I thank you very much, which I use in conferences or whatever. And I'm just going to show you the Australian accent, and we're going to change the accent around a couple of times so you can hear different things. So I'm just going to scan a line here, which I'll show you in a few seconds. And
early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
So that is the Australian accent. And if I just lower my camera down here, you can see me, hopefully you can see the words here. And if I just scan this again, the light comes on and you can see it.
Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
So I've got that on the Australian setting. So what I'm going to do, in fact, what I might just do to make life a lot easier for you is I might just stop sharing here. So hopefully you'll be able to see my screen and you'll be able to get a close-up view of what I'm doing as far as that's concerned. So the pen itself is here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the accent on the pen. I'm going to push the back button, which will always take me back to that main menu. And I'm just going to go down here, text reader, past, it's pretty hard to do this on this sort of thing, past dictionary, scan to file, voice recorder into settings. And I'm going to press the center button, which is okay. And then I'm going to just go down here to what's called TTS settings. I'm going to press OK. The first thing that comes up is English voice. I'm going to press OK. And as you can see there, it's set on Australian. So I'm going to change that. And I might just change that, go right back past Irish, past Scottish, Indian, American. The very first one is British. And I'm going to put that on British and just press OK. Now I'm just going to press the back button and we go back to text reader. And then I'm going to scan that same line again. Early to bed and early to rise. Here we go.
Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
So as you can see, we've now got a different accent. Now, just a couple of little things. Firstly, all the voices on the pen are female. Now, we have been asked on occasions, will we be putting a male voice on? And the answer is yes, but just not yet. It's coming, it's on our wish list. And hopefully we'll be able to see and hear the male voice in the not too distant future. It's just a shame that we haven't got the male voice on there at the moment, but the voices are all female. So you've gone from Australian through to male as far as the voice is concerned. Now, if there's a word that you're not sure of or you want to hear it again, you can just use the cursor to just go to wherever you want to start from. And then you just press the OK button again.
Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Now, if there's a word that you're not sure of, let's say you're not sure of the word wealthy, you can hold the center button down.
Wealthy.
And if you saw that there, it comes up again in a large typeface.
Wealthy.
And repeats it. Now you can do that as many times as you want. But if you're still not sure about the word, you can then go directly into the dictionary and get the dictionary definition of that word. Now, as I mentioned before, there are 5 dictionaries on the pen. There's a Spanish dictionary and a French dictionary because the pen will read Spanish and French. There are 3 English dictionaries on the pen. We have for years had the Collins Dictionary, which is a very comprehensive, good dictionary, very comprehensive though. And consequently, sometimes it's a little too much, particularly for primary students. We've added just recently the Oxford Primary Dictionary, and that's the one I'm going to be showing you today. The 3rd dictionary that we have on the pen is the North American Dictionary, and that's got all of the pens that, all of the North American definitions. But we're going to go back into the dictionary mode, and we're not sure about the word wealthy. So what we do is we press the menu button there, and it gives us a couple of options. The first one is clear screen, but if we go down to the next one, we get definition. And here is the definition of the word wealthy. Now I can scroll down the screen here just by going down, and I can read the definition if I want. Or better still, simply by pressing the center button,
wealthy.
It reads it to
Wealthy,
you.
Wealthy adjective. Wealthier, wealthiest. Someone is wealthy when they have a lot of money or property.
Okay, so what we heard there was the definition from the Oxford Primary Dictionary. Pretty short, pretty concise, and certainly suitable for primary students. And to be honest, it's suitable for most people. If that was too basic, you can go to the Collins Dictionary and it'll give you a much longer definition. But quite often that definition is too long and you might not want that. But you can change the dictionary, the one that you're getting the definition from, and you can do that in a couple of ways. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to press the back button to go back to where I was. And this is the quick set menu, which is we use this top button here, the menu. And you can see here, clear screen definition. But if I go down one more, it says select dictionary. So I can push that button, okay? And then it gives me a number of dictionaries to choose from. So we can see here that we're in the English dictionary mode, and the one that's come up is OPD, which is Oxford Primary Dictionary. That's the one we've just been listening to. If we want to change that, if I just press the down button here, As you can see, the Collins Dictionary has now come up, so that's the more comprehensive one. And if I go down one further, there's one that says NOAD, which stands for North American Dictionary. I can choose that. Should I be wanting to listen to French or Spanish, simply by pressing the button on the right, I can go to a different language. There's the Spanish dictionary for you, or if I go one more, there's the French dictionary. But I'm going to go back to English, and at the moment it's on Oxford Primary Dictionary, which is the one that I prefer it to be on, simply because it's much shorter and concise. And I just press OK, and I'm good to go. But one thing you should bear in mind, that if you are scanning some complicated words or some complicated text, that word may not be in the Oxford Primary Dictionary. And that is because it's a concise dictionary mainly aimed, as you would gather, for primary students. So not every word's in it. So you can quite often, if it's a complicated word, you scan it and it doesn't come up, then you can just switch dictionaries over to the Collins Dictionary, and you'll be able to get the definition as far as that is concerned. So the ability to be able to access the dictionary from the text function is another new feature. I mentioned earlier that we've added the Australian accent. Another feature is to be able to go directly to the dictionary mode from text reader. And if I go back from the pen and just press the back button a couple of times, I'm now back to that very text that I scanned initially. Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. So that is there. And if I wanted to just clear that, I can just clear that screen. Another feature that we've added just recently, and they're in the latest pens, is the auto read function. Now the pen itself, and if I just go back and tell you what I'm doing here, the pen is set up at the moment. I'm just going to clear that screen so that whenever I scan and then lift the pen up, it starts to read.
Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?
But a lot of people have said, and you know, there's a couple of schools of thought on this. The first is that if someone is dyslexic or they have a reading issue, it's not necessarily every word on every line that's a problem. It could be a word here, you know,
Question.
or a word here.
Surrender.
And it's not necessarily every word. But many teachers have said to us, well, look, that's all very well and good, but sometimes I want a student to be able to scan more than one line before we start reading. So we've added a new feature to the pen, which gives you the option to be able to listen to the text as soon as the pen is finished scanning.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall never surrender.
Or you can turn that auto read off. And the way that you do that is you simply go back into the quick set menu, and you go down onto the pen, down. Let me just do that again for you. So there's your clear screen, the definition, which we've already used to find the dictionary definition. Select dictionary, past adding mode to auto read. So now, if I go into auto read, as you can see, that is on. So that is designed so that when you lift the pen, it starts to read. But if we go down and switch that off, okay, so we've now switched it off. Now when I scan, so if I get something that's got a bit more text in there, so I'm now going to use just something else here. Hopefully you can see that. And if I scan this whole line and lift it, it doesn't start to read. And then I can scan the next line and lift it, it doesn't read. But now what I need to do is then use the digital highlighter on the pen. So I'm now just going to go back up to the start of that line. The line started with the ReaderPen. So we're just going to go back down to where the ReaderPen was. And when you're ready, you simply press the center button.
The ReaderPen converts text to speech and is a major technological breakthrough for those who have reading difficulties such as dyslexia.
So that is the auto read function on the pen, which is really everybody quite likes. And you have the flexibility to be able to read, to be able to hear as soon as you lift the pen, or to leave it on auto read. But if you do leave it on auto read, and you pick it up and you scan and you go, well, it's not reading, you go, oh, well, someone must have left it on auto read. So the way to fix that is we just simply go back to auto read. It's now on, off. We're just going to switch it to the on mode. And now we've covered that. So that's the auto read function, which is good. Now I know time is, what is the time? It's 4:30, so I want to leave time for questions, but I'm just going to run through a few new things. Some other new features that we have added to the pen, I've already mentioned the dictionary accessible from the text reader, and the auto read function. Another function that we have added is just the pause function. So that means that if we, and I'll show you how that works, all you do is you press the center button and it will pause at that point for you.
Technological breakthrough for those who have reading.
So I've now pushed the center button, it's now paused it, and if I push it again, it'll resume reading.
Difficulties such as dyslexia.
There's also a clear screen mode. So if I just, again, push this top right-hand button, the very first one in there is clear screen. You push that, it just resets it. Before, what you had to do if you were wanting to clear the screen is actually go out of the text reader mode and back into it. So the text reader mode can be, or the screen can be cleared just by pressing clear screen. Now, one thing that I also want to really point out, hi again, good to see you. I'm just going to show you, I'm just going to go back to the document that I had here before, which shows you the pen itself and these 5 main features. I want to just very briefly tell you the difference between the ReaderPen and the exam reader. Some people do say, what is the difference? Of course, the ReaderPen, as I've already mentioned, has storage on the pen. So it has data storage where you can actually save text and be able to read that back later. And it's also got audio storage or dictaphone where you can record things and it'll save that. So fundamentally, if someone did have reading issues, reading difficulties, and they were using this pen, and they were to use this pen in an exam, potentially they could cheat simply by putting the answers on the pen. They could scan the answers in first, go to the exam, and be able to use this to be able to cheat. So what we did is we developed the exam reader. Now the exam reader still converts text to speech and works in exactly the same way. We've subtly colored it bright orange. But the exam reader doesn't have the dictionary, the scan to file, or the data storage, or the voice storage on the pen. So this can be used in exams, and it's actually used in exams all around the world, in the UK, United States, in Europe, and in other places as well. Here in Australia, every exam board, every state exam board has evaluated this pen and approved it for use under special provisions, generally on a case-by-case basis. Now, the only exception to that is in South Australia or Northern Territories, where SACE, the SACE board, has approved the pen unconditionally. You do not have to apply to the board to use it. The principal of the school can make the decision. But in other states, New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, you have to apply to your exam board to be able to use it under special provisions. And of course, every state exam board is different, and I can't guarantee that they'll necessarily let a student use it. In fact, sometimes I appreciate that it can be very frustrating getting approval. Generally, what most exam boards want in order to be able to use the pen is 2 things. Firstly, evidence of the disability, which in the case of dyslexia is just simply a diagnosis, and generally confirmation that that student has been using the ReaderPen during the term. So they're not seeing the exam reader for the first time. We generally advise schools, if they say, well, which one should I get? We generally advise them to get the ReaderPen, simply because it's got more features, more functionality on there. And should a student go on to year 12 and be approved to use the exam reader, we would suggest that the school would buy those at that time. It's completely up to you. Some schools buy or trial the exam readers, other trial the ReaderPen, others just buy a combination of the two, but it's whatever suits you. Now, the reason for wanting to tell you the difference is because another feature that we've just added to the ReaderPen, or we've enhanced it, is a feature which is called exam lock. And you can see that if I just move down here, under settings, which is the 5th major part, we talk about menu language, we talk about talking menu, which is something I'll talk about in a few seconds. TTS settings, which is where you change the accent, British, Australian, Scottish, Irish, always fun to use those. But the 4th one down there is exam lock. An exam lock effectively turns the ReaderPen into the exam reader. And what that does is that it disengages the storage, it disengages both the data storage and the voice storage, and it disengages the dictionary. So you can, by entering a 6-digit code, just think of your hotel safe when you go to a hotel and you enter a 6-digit code, then you just re-enter that code and that restores the storage. And the chances of any student being able to guess your random 6-digit code is pretty remote. So you have the ability, if you do have the ReaderPen, to convert it into an exam pen for your internal school exams. Obviously not your year 12 exams when you need to go to your exam board, but if you've got the exam reader, you can use that as an exam pen in your internal school exams. And one feature that we've just added is flexibility when you do deactivate the storage. So you can deactivate the storage and the dictionary just to leave the text reader function, or if you wish, you can deactivate just the storage and leave the dictionary function. So that's up to you, but you have the ability to do either. Deactivate both the lots of storage and the dictionaries, or leave the dictionaries should that be an exam where the dictionary is allowed. The next one down here on the settings is the left-hand, right-hand settings, and I've already indicated that that's quite a vital feature for someone that's left-handed. So what that does do, it obviously swaps the screen around so that you can hold it in your left hand and read the screen, and obviously it then gives you the ability to scan in your left hand. One thing that's really important is that if I'm right-handed, I would naturally scan from left to right. And if someone is left-handed, they would naturally scan from right to left. But we've spoken to many people that are left-handed and said, yes, well, whilst I would naturally scan from right to left, I would prefer to scan from left to right in the direction of the words. Now, with the ReaderPen, you have the ability to do either. You can scan right to left or left to right. The pen will figure out what you're doing and will read the words normally. Don't worry, it won't read it backwards. Other functions on the pen under settings are brightness. The brightness relates to the brightness of the screen, which is just shown in front of the camera there. You can have it dim or bright, whatever suits you. The date and time, which you can set. Auto shutdown enables you just to set how much time you want the pen to just automatically shut down and save the battery. Once charged, there's a battery life of around 8 hours of continual use. So there's a ton of battery life on it, but that is protected by the auto shutdown feature on there. Other things that are on the pen itself, which you can do, these, if you go down to systems information, people say, well, what about the battery? So I'll just get rid of this here. I'll stop sharing and we'll just go back to the actual pen itself. You can see in the top right-hand corner, there is an icon which shows, it's just gone off there. Let me just turn that back on. And that's just an auto save feature there. So you can see there's an icon there which shows that battery is pretty well charged. But if I wanted to get the exact amount of battery in there, I can just scroll down past text reader, past dictionary. I don't know if you can see that. It's a bit hard to do this with this here. We're going to go down to settings and press the settings button. And then I'm going to scroll down in settings to what's called systems information. And there's a button here called state of charge. And if I press that, it will tell me the percentage of battery life that I have. So that's telling me that I've got, well, I can show it to you there, 90% of the charge left in the actual pen itself. So the battery life on the pen is very, very good. The other thing I just wanted to let you know about is some of the new settings that we've done for the exam reader. So as I've mentioned on a number of occasions, the ReaderPen will read 3 languages. It'll read English, French, and Spanish. Won't translate them, but it'll read them, and the dictionaries in the pen will give you the definition in the appropriate language. What we've added, because we don't have storage or the dictionaries on the exam reader, we do have some extra processing. So we have just added a number of different languages to the pen. The exam reader traditionally has read 5 languages, which is English, French, German, Italian, and Spanish. But we've added a number of additional languages. We've actually added 7 new languages to this pen. So the pen now will read a total of 12 languages, and that includes Chinese. It'll read, will scan both traditional and simplified Chinese and be able to read those back to you in Mandarin. So the languages that the exam reader pen will read now are the 5 that traditionally were there, which was the English, French, German, Italian, and Spanish. But we've added Chinese, and we've also added some other European languages, including Portuguese, Swedish, Danish, Norwegian, Dutch, and Russian. So we have a total now of 12 languages, or 13 if you include both traditional and simplified Chinese. We get a lot of talk about when we can add some other languages. We are working on some other pens that we're able to do that, but at the moment we've got the 12 languages on the exam reader pen. The other thing that we've added to both of these pens is a setup wizard. Because there are many different features and functionalities in there, the setup wizard, when you start the pen for the very first time, will guide you through some of those settings and you can choose them. However, if you want to run the setup wizard at any time, you can just go back to your settings and it will be able to run that wizard for you again. A couple of other things I just want to run through very briefly before we hand over to questions and just see exactly how those go. Some of the other things on this guide, which is very useful for you. The page here is now hints and tips. And so that has got just answers to things that people always ask. You know, will it read laminated paper? How fast do you have to go? And we can sort of talk about those things as well. Believe it or not, when you use the pen, you don't have to go particularly slow. You can actually scan quite fast. But just like any piece of technology, you'll be able to get the feel of it yourself. You have, at the start, it'll be a bit shaky, same with the student. Don't let them give up on it. Sometimes you can give this pen to 2 students that you think would, or 2 people that you think would benefit from the pen. One would go, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can read independently. I don't have to put my hand up every 2 minutes and ask the teacher what that word is. The other student may say, look, I didn't like it. It wasn't reliable. I couldn't work it. I don't like it. That's just the way of the world. The pen is not for everyone, but for those people that do adjust to it very quickly, it can change your life and it can re-engage students into the classroom. But have a little bit of a play as far as the pen is concerned and get the speed that's right for you. There are ways on the pen itself to be able to speed it up and slow it down so that you can tailor the pen to suit an individual student. So that if someone does have a severe reading difficulty, and the normal playback is too fast, you can slow that down. And the way that you can do, if I just go back up here into the settings, you can, in the text reader mode, you just press the menu button, and under read settings, which is the very last one there, there's speed and volume, there's word pause and punctuation pause. So together with those, you can set that pen up to be ideal for a particular student. Of course, if you've got a pen that's used by many students, it's not necessarily possible to do that. But if one student is using one pen, then that's something that can be done quite easily. The scan to file function is pretty simple, as is the recorder. It's really just a case of going into those, pressing new file or new recording, and be able to then start that. One question we get asked quite a lot is, if you do use the dictaphone or the voice recorder, will that convert that to text? And the answer is no, it won't. It just keeps it as an audio recording, and it's either an MP3 or a WAV file. But look, I've only got 12 minutes left, so what I might do is take a pause here. Andrea has been monitoring things in the office to be able to keep a note of questions. So I might just ask Andrea if there's some questions there that I can answer, anything that I haven't particularly gone through as yet. I know there's lots of things to do on the pen, and we will be having more tutorials but going into specific areas. But Andrea, if I can pass over to you to see if there's any questions that you'd like me to answer at this stage.
Sure, David, thanks. Hi, everyone. We've got a couple of questions, and the first one is from Marina, and she's asking about charging the pen. Like, how do you charge it? Do you have to charge it? How often? You know, if you could talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So when you get the pen, it's a bit like an iPhone or whatever. There'll be a bit of a charge on it. The amount of charge varies, so you'll have to just check that when you get it. The pen comes with a charging cable. Let me just show you what that is like. What I'll do is I might just stop sharing so that you're going to see more of me here, I hope. We'll see. So here's the charging cable, which is just a standard charging cable. It's got a USB plug at one end. It's got the plug that fits into the back of the pen at the other. So that just fits into there. What we would suggest is you can plug it into your computer. We just suggest you plug it into what you normally charge your mobile phone, plug it into the wall. It only takes an hour or so to charge fully. And once it is charged, as I mentioned before, it does have a life of about 8 or 9 hours of continuous use. And you can check, if you are picking the pen up at the end of each day, you can just have a quick look at that icon that's at the front of the pen there. You can, if I can just show you that, you can see there the state of the charge. If that looks pretty full, I wouldn't worry about it. Generally, if I go to a conference, I just charge it at the beginning of the conference and leave it for the time. You might only have to charge it once a week. So hopefully that's answered that question.
Okay, so the next question is from Vicky, and she's asking whether you need the 2 pens.
Right. Well, it depends on if you're a teacher, Vicky. If you're a parent, no, just one pen. As I mentioned before, if I was a school, I would really just concentrate on the ReaderPen as the product that really has the most features and functionality. If you wish, and we have lots of schools that order 10 pens, and we have a class pack of 10 pens, you can mix and match those. You can say, look, I want 9 of those and 1 of those, or I want 5 and 5. It's really up to you. It's just that the exam pen only comes into its own, really, in year 12 exams. The rest of the time, you can use the pen, of course, but it doesn't have the features that this pen has. So my recommendation would be get the ReaderPen, use that. If you have got school exams, of course, put it into exam mode, and you can use this pen for school exams. When you come to year 12, depending on what state you're in, whether you need to get approval from NESA or VCAR or whatever, then you can possibly get the exam reader. But you can always mix and match depending on how many pens you want to order. We have some schools that just have one pen, that's all they've got. I don't know how they cope, but they do. And then we've got other schools that have 20 or 30. So you might want to have, in that case, a couple of exam readers there as well. But our recommendation really would be the ReaderPen. The price, by the way, is exactly the same. So in which case you get more bang for your buck with the ReaderPen. Hopefully that's answered that.
Thank you, David. Another question from Vicky was, how much do the pens cost, and is there a discount if you're a teacher?
Yes, well, there you go. That's a good question. So the normal price of the pens are $350. Now, there is no GST on that, so it's not $350 plus GST, it's $350 because we are GST exempt. And what we had to do is we had to go to the Australian Tax Office, ATO, and we had to put in a submission and say we would like to make these pens exempt because these are a piece of assistive technology that helps people with reading difficulties and reading problems. They agreed, and so there's no GST applicable. So a single pen is $350. If you buy if your school buys 5 pens or more, the price comes down to $330. And if it's generally the school that buys them. If you're a teacher and you're buying them and you're out of your own money, please contact me and we'll give you a special price because you're doing you're going above and beyond the call of duty there. So, but $350 is the normal price, $330 if you're buying a class set. Just bearing in mind also, we do free trials so that if you haven't used the pen before and you wish to trial the pen for the first time, just contact me or contact anyone in our office and we will arrange a free trial for you. So there is absolutely no cost for that. We will send the pen out and you can trial it for 30 days. And at the end of the trial period, you can either return the pen to our office, which is fine, or alternatively, you can buy it. But there is no obligation and there's no cost. The only cost you're going to be up for if you do return the pen is just the return postage. So we do trials all around Australia, and we're more than happy to do trials with anyone that's listening today if they haven't got a pen already. Andrea, anything else?
Yes, we have one here from Leanne, and she wants to know, do you need to hold the button on the exam reader pen down whilst using it, or can you hold at the sides like the ReaderPen? And also, do you need a code to unlock the exam lock on the ReaderPen?
Right.
So there's really 2 questions, or a couple of questions.
2 questions there. Okay, so when you use the pen, and it doesn't matter which one you use, you don't have to push any buttons while you're scanning. The key or the important thing is that it's in text reader mode. Remember I mentioned that there were 5 main modes on the ReaderPen. There was the text reader, the dictionaries, the data storage, the voice storage, and settings. So provided it's on text reader, you don't press any buttons. And it's exactly the same with the exam pen. They're exactly the same design with exactly the same functionality. So don't push anything. We have had situations with people saying, I've pushed this button while I'm scanning and it doesn't seem to work. And the key is don't push any buttons. And then you're able to get that response. Sorry, what was the second part of that question, Andrea?
The second part was, do you need a code to unlock the exam lock on the ReaderPen?
Absolutely, absolutely do. And we've had a situation where people have entered an exam lock onto the ReaderPen, which is great. It's disengaged the storage, which means you can use it. And then they've forgotten that code. And what we've had to do is completely clear the memory. So it's just like your hotel safe. You enter that code at the beginning and that locks your safe. And if you want to get anything out of the safe, you have to enter that same code again. So don't forget the code, write it down, and don't pick a code that's easy to remember. Don't pick 11111. It's a 6-digit code, but you need the code to enter the code to disengage the storage and to turn it into an exam pen, and you need the same code to unlock it.
Very good. There's one more question. I think this is a little bit more technical, from Catherine, and she's asking, her pen went flat, and she just plugged it in about 20 minutes ago into her laptop, and now the screen is showing character scanning, and she can't get out of that screen.
Okay.
So can you do a bit of a quick troubleshooting?
Yes, indeed. Of course I can. So there's a couple of resets on the pen itself. On the back of the pen, so here's the front of the pen, but on the back of the pen, there's, if you can see it, there's a little tiny little reset button that you just can use a paper clip or the end of your pen to reset that. So what I would do if your pen is showing wrong characters, unplug it, don't leave it plugged in, unplug it, and then press the reset button. Now, should it still have problems, we call that a soft reset. But then, if I can just go back to my share screen scenario for you. So I'm going back now to the menu. If you have a look through here, you go back into the settings, there is a hard reset there, which you can basically, if you go down to that very second to last one, it says default settings or reboot. If you go down there and reboot it, that will reboot that whole pen. So you've got a couple of settings which will enable you just to reset things should it go a bit wonky. But bear in mind also that every pen comes with a 12-month warranty, and should anything go wrong within that 12 months, and to be honest, a little outside of that as well, we're not super strict on that, we will replace that pen for you. We have very few problems, but occasionally a pen can misbehave. Generally, it's because someone's dropped it or done something, you know, taken it swimming or something which they shouldn't do. Treat it like an iPhone or a mobile phone. Don't drop it. Don't drop it on the screen. Whatever you do, don't drop it on the end either. Don't take it swimming or in the shower with you. But it's pretty durable. It's pretty shockproof. It comes in a case. When you buy a pen, and here not only you get the charger, which I've showed you, a set of headphones, but you also get a carry case like this. And that case is reinforced at the bottom, so that if you do drop it, particularly if it's in the case, then that protects the pen. A word of advice, when you do put it in the case, put it in backwards, like that. If you put it in frontwards, it's very hard to get out. So you can do it, but just put it in backwards. And then if you do have a set of pens, then we do have an attaché case or carry case, which will take all 10 pens, should you want to keep them together in the classroom. Now, hopefully, Andrea, there's not too many other questions, because it's 5 o'clock and I'm very mindful to stick to time if I can.
Yeah, just one more, and it should be a quick one, but a couple of people asked if they purchased pens last year. Are the enhancements that you're talking about, are they available? How can they be downloaded onto the pen? How do they know what version they've got? Right,
okay, good question. So the pens generally are upgradable, and the reason I say generally is because a few years ago we increased the processing size of the pen, so we went up from 4 gig to 8 gig processing, and some of those pens now, those older pens, if it's like 3 years old, are not possible to upgrade to the latest features and functionality. But if you bought a pen last year at 8 gig, it will be possible to do it. My recommendation is that if you contact us, either send me an email or Andrea an email, or just an email to auinfo@scanningpens.com, we'll be able to send you instructions of how to upgrade the pen. You do that by going not to readerpen.com or examreader.com, but to cpen.com, bearing in mind CPen is the manufacturer of the pen, and they have the upgrades. It's not a simple upgrade, and if you've got an IT department, I will give it to them and we'll guide them through it. it can be done, but it's not as simple as just plugging the pen in and upgrading it. But if you have got an older pen and you wanted to get some of those new features that I've talked about, the Australian accent, the auto read, the pause and setup wizard, then we can guide you through that. So I'd suggest you contact us and we'll be able to help you. Worst case scenario, you can return that pen to us and we will send you an updated pen. There's a good deal for you. So we would gladly do that for any of our customers to make sure that they've got the latest features and functionality. Now look, with the time now 5 o'clock, I am mindful that you know, I could talk a long time about these pens, but I'll leave it there. We are recording this, so we will have this available at some stage, and we are more than happy to answer any other questions that you may have, or to guide you through any aspect of the pen itself. Bear in mind that free trial is available if you wish to have one. Just contact us and we'll get pens out to you. And if I can just finish off now by just saying to all of you, I know it's such a difficult time and you're going to be working from home and doing homeschooling or whatever. I just hope you get through this difficult time okay, and we return to normal sooner rather than later. But let's hope that everything goes well. But look, thanks so much indeed for your time today and for participating. We really do appreciate it. And we will, please send us any questions or answers that you might have, any questions that you have, and we'd be more than happy to help you out as far as that's concerned. Okay? Thanks so much.